The first light, in the dark January 30th, 1943, 19,000 feet above the Elbe, approaches to Hamburg. The Halifax shudders as it bites into a band of weather. Rime frost tracing white veins across the cockpit glass. Inside, the aircraft is a tunnel of noise. Merlin engines drumming, oxygen masks rasping. The intercom a thin wire of voices in the storm. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Ashe Hargreaves keeps two fingers hooked around the yoke, feeling the ship's moods through leather gloves, while his navigator squints at a chart flashed with red pencil. Farther aft, in a dim cubby bristling with cables and a brand new hulk of black metal, Sergeant David Pike leans over a round green screen that looks like a porthole into some phosphorescent sea. Mag drop holding steady. The engineer calls. Icing moderate. Copy. Ashe says, voice flat, eyes forward. He flicks his torch off, lets the darkness press in. Outside is January over North Germany cloud in ragged tiers. Moonlight throttled to a smear, flares rising somewhere ahead where another stream has been chewed by flak. But tonight, their ship carries a secret shaped like a shallow dome under the belly. An odd little blister of perspex that, if the boffins at Malvern are right, can make coastlines glow and cities bloom on a screen even in this blackness. In the radar alcove, Pike's gloved hand dials gain, then time base. The cathode ray tube breathes awake, its center a bright heart. The sweep spinning round and round with a low electronic hum. He has spent weeks with it on the ground mock missions, plate photographs, hours of staring until coastlines engrave themselves behind his eyelids. But this is the first time under flak and cloud, with the mouth of the Elbe somewhere ahead and Hamburg crouched like a giant coal pile at its end. Radar to skipper, Pike says, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. Sweep alive. I have returns. Say again, Ashe asks. Range 20 to 30 miles, wait. Pike eases the strobe. A knuckled, curving smear brightens along one sector of the scope, jagged, notched, alive. That should be the coast. See the bite there? Could be the estuary. The navigator cranes back, stealing a look. We should be abreast of Cuxhaven by the dead reckoning. Wind drifts worse than forecast. Confirm, Pike says, more confident now. He nudges another control. The coastal line sharpens, flecked by tiny glints inland that pulse with the sweep. Towns, perhaps, or water towers, or a string of lakes reflecting like chips of glass. Then, farther up range, a swelling bruise of light gathers on the tube, diffuse at first, then resolving into a bulbous mass with arteries stretching from it. The hair at the back of Pike's neck prickles. Skipper, I've got the city. No one breathes for a second. Ashe's hands tighten. The Halifax lumbers on, the engine's song momentarily the only language in the world. Talk me in, Ashe says. We'll run the planned track unless you say otherwise. Pike centers the cursor and rides the sweep. The city patch grows, brightening as they close docks along the Elbe, throwing hard returns. Canals and basins carving dark veins through the light. The curving ribbon of the river itself, a negative scar snaking past warehouses and shipyards. Clouds are nothing on the scope. Ghosts that the radio waves punch through to fetch geometry back from the earth. It is not a photograph. It is a map made from echoes. And once you've learned the grammar, it reads as clearly as daylight. Left 2 degrees. Pike says, hold. Good, now your track kisses the river bend. We're a minute ahead of ETA. Flak blossoms somewhere off the port quarter, dull thumps that make the fuselage twitch. A cone of searchlight fingers gropes higher, then wavers away. Blind, the bomb aimer, down on his belly at the nose, murmurs a prayer into his mask, and checks the toggles again. Marker reports are late. The wireless op says on the intercom. Ground controllers say cloud at target 8/10. Some red seen short. Pike checks the city patch again, even through interference. The docks gleam like teeth. "We don't need the markers," he says, surprised by the steel in his own voice. "Skipper, the river bifurcation puts us on Hamburg proper. Those brighter Pips industrial docks. If we hold this run, we can center up." "Copy," Ash says. He eases the Halifax a hair to starboard, feeling the ship settle. "Bomb aimer. You'll take radar talk down from David as secondary to visual." "Understood." The bomb aimer replies, breath slow, a recitation after 1,000 drills and a dozen trips where drills never felt like this. The war, for him, is usually blackness and dead reckoning and the sudden chaos of light over the target. But now, there is, impossibly, a picture in the dark, fed from a spinning magnetron that spits impossible power into a tight beam. Centimetric waves small enough to see docks as if by touch. Another burst of flak hammers their right. Nearer. Shrapnel rattles the skin with a can of nails chatter. "We're okay," the engineer says. "Temp's good." Pike's hand is steady now. He trims the brilliance, wipes a patch of fogging from the glass with his sleeve, and rides the heartbeat of the sweep. The first time he saw this in a lecture hut professor with chalked equations about electron drift and resonant cavities, he'd thought it wizardry, a metal donut bored with holes. Electrons whipped into a dance so furious they sing microwave notes no one can hear. Marry it to a dish beneath the belly, and England's bombers can see like owls. "Stand by," Pike says. The city is full screen now. The river a black S through it. Skipper beginning final. Hold this. "Bomb aimer, your aiming point is the Dockland Spur southeast of the bend. Confirmed on radar. Visual is patchy." The bomb aimer says, "I believe I have a murk of fires." "Radar has you," Pike says. 4, 3, 2. The Halifax steadies as if holding its breath. Outside, another cone of light lances near and slides away, baffled. In the green glow, Hamburg sits like a luminous bruise under glass. Somewhere down there, men are running and shouting. Somewhere up here, a handful of Englishmen are reading the earth by echoes and deciding where to drop their weight of steel. "Now," Pike whispers. The bomb doors yaw open. The aircraft lifts, suddenly lighter, a whale spouting out its burden to the invisible city below. Ash holds her straight until the bomb aimer's "bomb's gone" echoes across the intercom, then kicks rudder and dips a wing to break away. They slide back into cloud, into a night that is no longer blind. Behind them, the green eye dims as Pike winds the gain down, his heart still keeping time with the sweep. Origins, the Magnetron awakens. 1940, February 21st, 1940, Basement Laboratory, University of Birmingham, England. Steam hisses from a radiator. Wartime blackout paper dulls the windows to a charcoal sheen. John Randall, thin and hawk-nosed, bends over a lump of copper the size of a teacup saucer. Hairy boot, sleeves rolled, tightens the screws on a vacuum pump as if it were a submarine hatch. On the bench sits a strange object, a copper donut drilled with a ring of cavities. A central cathode suspended like the filament of a light bulb. It looks improvised, perilous, almost homemade. It is also, though no one here will speak of it above a murmur, the most powerful short-wavelength transmitter the world has ever seen. "Ready?" Boots says, eyes flicking to a needle on a meter. Voltage in 5. Randall nods to the student at the far end to kill the overheads. Darkness folds into the room. Only the dials glow. Boot throws the switch. In the vacuum seal, an electron cloud takes shape and the copper sings inaudibly. Microwave music. 10 centimeters to the cycle. The meter climbs past anything the old Klystrons could dream of. Randall exhales. "There you are," he whispers, as if the device were an animal that might bolt. Coherent power. At last, they have been chasing a ghost centimetric wavelengths that, on paper, mean sharp radar pictures, tight beams, small antennas, but every transmitter before this sputtered like a candle in wind. This one, a cavity magnetron, corrals electrons into racing lanes carved in metal. The magnetic field bends them. The cavities set the note, and the thing howls out kilowatts of microwave energy through a stubby waveguide. The mathematics are tidy. The result is raw. Weeks later, the device travels under linen in a diplomat's briefcase. September 1940. In Washington and then Cambridge, Massachusetts, Sir Henry Tizard, a scientist with the mien of an air chief, lays the magnetron on an American table. "This," he says to men from Bell, General Electric, Sperry, and MIT, "is the family silver. If we lose the house, at least the silver will be safe." The Americans pick it up as one might pick up a newborn by the scruff gingerly, then grinning when it yowls. Across the Charles River, in borrowed rooms at MIT, technicians scavenge grease and copper, learn to mill cavities, whisper new words, waveguide, klystron, magnetron as if they were charms. The radiation laboratory is born overnight. Its first lullaby, the magnetron's inaudible note. Back in Britain, the device migrates from Birmingham to a relocated Radar Brain Trust, the telecommunications research establishment at Malvern. Set in the rugby pitches and cloisters of a school evacuated for the war. There, in drafty huts that smell of wax polish and solder, engineers marry the magnetron's heart to a bomber's bones. They call the system H2S, for reasons no one can publicly explain, and everyone privately jokes about home sweet home. Some say, because it shows you the coast and the way back. A rough dish takes shape in drawings, and then metal, a parabolic reflector slung beneath the fuselage in a perspex blister. A feed horn peering down, like the snout of some curious creature. On an operator's table, a cathode ray tube and controls range. Gain, brilliance. On the glass, if you are steady of hand and sure of mind, coastlines should appear as bright threads and estuaries as bites taken from the glow. October-December 1942. Boscombe down, then RAF Whiten. Pathfinder force. A Wellington bumps along a wet runway at dawn. H2S lashed into its belly like contraband. The operator green as spring. Knuckles white stares as the sweep traces the south coast. The Isle of Wight appearing like a polished thumbnail. "That's impossible," the pilot mutters, craning. It is not impossible. It is centimetric. At Malvern, Edward Taffy Bowen, who once flew airborne radar tests sitting on an upturned bucket, prowls the lab and harangues and coaxes until aircrews and scientists speak the same language. The set is capricious vibration, loosened screws. Rain fogs the blister. The dish ices over, but each flight prints on film a new proof that night, and Cloud can be wounded. What the aircrews want is not poetry. They want to get to the right city and put bombs on the right quarter tonight. Not by guess and flare alone, but by shapes on a tube that match a briefing map. The first Pathfinders climb with H2S in early January 1943, and the operators learn the grammar of echoes under oxygen masks. Rivers are black, docks are bright, suburbs feather into gray. Sand spits and causeways and lake chains make signatures that, once known, cannot be mistaken. In a Halifax or Stirling, the operator's booth becomes a priest's cell, where men pray in the green light for the sweep to tell them they are not lost boys over a black sea. January 30th, 1943. The very night Arthur Ashe Hargreaves pushes his Halifax toward the Elbe. Another H-2S-equipped Stirling will fail to come home, crashing near Rotterdam in the wreckage. German technicians will find the blister and the dish and the copper heart. Telefunken and Lorenz engineers will hold the Magnetron up to the light with the same wariness Randall and Boot once did. And within months, their night fighter crews will mount a passive receiver Fuji 350 Naxos that sniffs for H-2S's emissions like a bloodhound. The invention that opens the night will cast a shadow of its own. But on this first winter of its use, the advantage is British and heavy. At Malvern that same week, a junior technician taps a penlight against the cramped lettering on an H-2S control box and thinks, absurdly, of phonograph labels. Someone has penciled initials inside the panel door, RB, HB. The family silver has been cut, polished, set into a bomber's tableware, and sent up into flak. Later, after dawn, Hargreaves's Halifax will groan down on a frosted English field. The crew will smell the grass under the exhaust and feel the earth through tires. Ashe will peel his oxygen mask aside and grin the grin of a man who has flown through something new. David Pike will linger at the scope as the tube's afterglow dies. "You saw it," a ground man will ask him, as if asking about a ghost. "Yes," Pike will say, throat ragged with cold and adrenaline. "I saw a city through cloud." At a briefing hut of raw timber and damp coats, a TRE liaison with a stack of envelope negatives will wait like a bookmaker to collect bets. He will lay the prints on a table, luminous worms of rivers, bright knots of docks, paler smears of suburbs. Beside each, grease-penciled lat-longs and times, the old way pilotage, stopwatch. Dead reckoning will not die, and never should. But beside it now lives a third sense, indifferent to darkness, that writes geography with pulses and time of flight. H-2S will earn nicknames, refinements, a shorter wavelength cousin at 3 centimeters that draws even finer lines. It will suffer teething hell and pay in lives when its emissions betray a crew to a hunter. It will, nonetheless, change the texture of 1,000 nights. And somewhere in a Birmingham basement, where the plaster still remembers the winter of 1940, a dusty bench will keep the outline of a copper donut the size of a saucer. The turning point, Hamburg, and the night the map caught fire. July 24th, 1943, 22,000 feet over the North Sea, inbound to Hamburg. The bomber stream is a black river flowing east. Hundreds of Lancasters and Halifaxes sliding in loose tiers, exhausts whispering blue. Over the intercom, the voices are steadier than in January. Routines have hardened into muscle memory. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Ashe Hargreaves rides the slipstream of another 4-engine shape and watches the moon turn the cloud deck into hammered pewter. In the nose, the bomb aimer leans on his elbows, in the radio nook. The wireless operator listens to a hush that should be filled with German ground radar and night fighter controllers, and hears almost nothing. Window away, the wireless op reports, a smile in his voice. The first bundles are floating now. From a chute in the fuselage, the crew has just tossed packets of tinfoil strips window cut to the half wavelength of German Würzburg radar. As they tumble earthward, the strips blossom into a phantom city on enemy scopes. Controllers in northern Germany will see an immense, shimmering cloud of false echoes drifting with the wind and pour night fighters into it. Somewhere else, the real bomber stream will move in near silence. But the silence is not empty. In the radar alcove, the Magnetron sings, and Sergeant David Pike's H-2S tube is alive with a more honest night. The coastline swells up on the glass. The Elbe bites in. Pike centers the cursor and trims brilliance until the river blackens into a snake. He has traced this approach so often his fingers move before he thinks gain, range, time base. In January, the green eye had been new sorcery. Now it is an instrument he plays by ear. Navigation check. Ash says, "On time, on distance." The navigator answers. Pencil tapping. Wind 5 points higher than forecast. Adjust 2 right. Copy. Ash says. "David, talk us in." Pike breathes on the glass and wipes the fog with his sleeve. Then watches the city bulge from the glow like a bruise under skin. Hamburg's docks flash hard and bright. Canals and basins cut neat black seams through the returns. Everything that is brick and steel answers the Magnetron's summons. Everything that is water or open parkland softens to a murmur. He can see the signature even through weather the Kohlbrand curve, the islanded yards, the long rectangles of storage sheds that shine like stacked coins. "Hold course," Pike says. "River bend on your left 5. Docks ahead bright. Pathfinders should be in. Downrange. Swift mosquitoes of the Pathfinder force. Handpicked by Air Vice Marshal Don Bennett. Slip ahead of the stream. On nights like this, they are the ink in Bomber Command's pen. If the sky were clear, they would mark with target indicators by visual cues alone. But tonight, low cloud and smoke promise to smear the ground picture. And the first marker reports crackle in red seen, but scattered. Visibility sporadic. In the Mosquito's cramped nav table, another H-2S tube spins, and a navigator counts canals and dock pips, then presses his transmit key. The master bomber's clipped voice comes back, marking by H-2S, stand by for instructions. Inside Hargreaves's Halifax, the intercom clicks and breathes. The engineer murmurs temps and pressures. The bomb aimer mutters his catechism, doors, fusing, intervalometer. The aircraft is one animal made of 7 men. Outside, bright fingers of searchlights begin to grope. But they grope in the wrong place, arrested by fields of window. Far below, Hamburg is already a wick. Earlier strikes have kindled fires tonight and on the nights to follow. The perfect, lethal alignment of dry air, wind, and closely spaced incendiary loads will turn the city's fabric into a furnace. Pike keeps his voice level. "Target picture strong," he says. "Doc's brightest move half a degree right. You're centered." Ash's left hand rests on the throttles. He remembers the first time they let Pike's voice guide them through cloud and flak to a city no eyes could see. This feels different. The sky itself has been bent enemy radar dazzled by chaff, their own radar etching truth through weather. It is as if the crews have reached up and taken hold of the night, twisting it so that the odds, for once, favor them. Master bomber to main force. The radio cracks. Hold on the Reds bomb between the river bifurcation and the bright dock returns. Keep spacing tight. Markers correcting. Confirmed, Pike says, almost to himself. The tube blooms with what looks like a city sweating light. He homes on the dockland spur he has practiced 100 times in briefings and lectures at Malvern prints of scope photos passed around like contraband. Instructors bark-voiced, meticulous. When he nudges the time base, the river widens and the docks brighten. Steady, steady. flak begins to feel for them. Bursts flower like soot-black chrysanthemums at their altitude, and just below, the Halifax trembles as fragments rattle its skin. But the cones of searchlight light are blind, dancing in empty corridors of window. Ash holds the track and hears the bomb aimers whisper. Visual on fires. Radar has the geometry. Standing by. The truth of centimetric radar is on the glass and in the bones. At 10 centimeters, the lobe is tight. The reflections sharp. Rain is a veil the beam walks through. In huts at Malvern, men bent over oscilloscopes thought in equations. In the belly of a Halifax now, those equations are a city seen through stone and smoke. Bomb doors, ash orders, doors. The engineer echoes, and the wind's hard hand slaps the fuselage as the jaws open. Pike feels the old fear, what if the picture lies? What if he is tracked to a false brightness, a mirror of some other bend he has misread? He rides the sweep and forgets the fear. There is the river's S. There the dock rectangles. There the brighter spar of warehouses the masters taught them to expect. He has learned the dialect of returns until it speaks in his sleep. Now, he says. The Halifax shucks its load into a sky already filled with falling sparks. The aircraft lifts, lightened. Ash kicks rudder and begins the turn. On the scope, the city's heart brightens and pulses as reflections multiply from rising columns of heated air. The picture warps not from error, but from physics itself, the atmosphere changing thickness in the heat. Pike rides the bloom like a mariner feeling a tide. They break, drop, and run west with the stream. Engines humming, eyes scanning for the sharp-edged triangle of a Bf-110 night fighter against the dim sky. A ribbon of tracers coils somewhere below and falls away. On the intercom, someone laughs once, then clamps it down again. No one speaks of what is happening beneath the wings. Streets drawing breath, then exhaling flame. The wind whipping the fire into a single living thing. Ash levels her, and for a minute they are only a machine running hard in the dark. Pike dials the gain back and watches the coastline dim. He is thinking absurdly of the Birmingham bench, of a copper donut that hissed under vacuum while two men held their breath. That note is here now, riding the Halifax home, opening and closing a door in the night. The wireless operator catches a fragment master bomber. Good concentration. Continue. Somewhere behind them, another wave is sliding in. Somewhere ahead, the North Sea waits cold and clean. Course to base, the navigator says. Tapping once more, let's go home. The counterstroke Naxos and the hunters return. December 16th, 1943, 21,000 feet west of Berlin. The Battle of Berlin in full cry. The sky is cold iron, the bombers boxed inside it. Frost rims the navigator's instruments like white lace. Oxygen masks rasp in time with engine note. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Ashe Hargreaves trims the Halifax against a shiver of crosswind and watches a dim procession of four-engine shadows drift ahead into the black funnel of Germany. The stream is tighter now than it was in July, practiced and punished. They have learned to carry the night in their pockets, window by the sack. H2S humming in its perspex blister and to spend it as needed. But the night learns as well. Radar alive, Sergeant David Pike says quietly from his alcove. The H2S tube paints the odor-spree lakes like ink blots. The city's bright mass still a long glide away. He rides gain and range like a helmsman. Coast behind. First turn point in 3. Keep her sweet. Ash answers, fingers light on the yoke. He has flown through more twilights than birthdays now. and the war has hardened him into a man who counts miles by engine beats. Outside, a thin rung of searchlights feels lightly at the heavens. They cannot reach this far. The window confuses their masters. But something else, new and unseen, can. 15 miles off their starboard quarter, a Messerschmitt Bf 110 G4 climbs with patience, engines at a saving throttle, the cockpit lit by the green whispers of instruments. Unteroffizier Karl Goetz, wireless operator and radar man, leans over a box with a face blanker than any scope, no sweep, no blip. It is a detector, not a picture Fugue 350 Naxos Zed. A passive ear tuned to the 10-centimeter song that British bombers spill into the night. There, Guts says. Voice level. A needle twitches. The set does not tell him distance, only direction and amplitude, the way a hound knows the fox's angle by scent strength. But it is enough. He taps the pilot's shoulder. Left 5. Stronger. The pilot, Lieutenant Weber, turns the heavy fighter like a man moving a wardrobe, smooth and precise, up front. The Liechtenstein SN2 radar glows with its longer wavelength sweep, useful inside a mile or two. The Naxos will bring them in the door. The British have blinded Würzburg and Freya with foil. Very well, says Germany. We will follow the British's own lanterns, in the Halifax. The wireless operator frowns at the hush on his phones, then glances toward Pike's corner. The H-2S sings like a kettle out of human hearing, but its hum is felt in the air the faintest burr if you stand close to the blister. Pike has heard the rumors, a crashed Sterling near Rotterdam in January. A blister pulled from mud. A magnetron held up in a German lab under white lights. Malvern's liaison had come to brief the squadrons with a map of risk limit transmissions over the target. Use standby between fixes, short bursts. They have learned to cup their hands around a candle. David, Ash says. How long to a picture? 10 seconds. Pike answers, keeping his voice easy. He flips the transmit toggle up, brings the time base tight. The lakes darken to perfect ovals. The river reads as a black thread. The city is a faint, distant glow hardening at the core. Picture firm. Turn point confirmed. Steer 174. Ash turns. The Halifax hums, a mile behind and 1,000 feet below. The Bf 110 hauls into their vector like a hunter easing into a well-worn path. Fish pond clear, the wireless op says, almost to reassure himself. Fish pond, a clever add-on that steals a sliver of H-2S's energy to draw a tail warning display, has been fitted since summer. A green donut on which a creeping pip might betray a fighter coming up from beneath. Tonight, its circle is clean. That is a truth, and, like many truths in war, only part of the picture. Naxos has no pip. It is a pointing finger in the dark. Getz rides it, calling tiny corrections as the signal swells. Stronger, stronger. Now, Weber leans into his harness, eyes scanning the SN2 scope for a post at near range. The Bf 110 climbs into the bomber's wake and holds its breath. The fighter's guns are not in the nose. They are in the roof, Schräge Musik. Twin 20mm cannon angled up, ready to scissor into a bomber's belly. Pike, meanwhile, speaks in the measured tone of ritual. River on left 5, docks beyond. Master bomber reports marking by H-2S. Recommend hold track. He toggles transmit off between calls, counting in his head, 5, 6, 10, because someone in a hut told him that stealth could be measured by seconds. Bomb doors, Ash says. The engineer answers. The Halifax yawns. Air shivers past new openings. Fish pond tickles. The wireless op jerks. Contact low closing. Ash doesn't think. He moves. The Halifax rolls left and down while lifting its nose. A corkscrew port drilled into every crewman until it's a reflex. Tracers rip past where the starboard wing had been a breath before. The night is suddenly full of geometry angles, arcs, guesses. Pike's elbow slams the table. The H-2S scope smears. He grabs the set to keep it from tearing free. Hold it. The bomb aimer barks. You'll spoil the shut-it. Ash snaps, teeth bared. He rides the turn as if circling a drain. The BF-110 flashes under them, elegant and murderous, its upward gun stitching at empty air. Weber curses softly, banks, and climbs again. Gets steady, hums a monotone, signal still good back to strong. Fish pond shows the creeping pip again below, closing. The wireless op yells headings like a footballer calling plays. Ash corkscrews the other way, starboard, forcing Weber to overshoot. The Halifax complains like an old ship, a smell of cordite, cold metal, and a thin, bitter tang of fear leaks into every mask. David, ditch it, Ash says. Kill the lantern. Pike's hand slaps the transmit to standby. The H-2S tube dims to a jealous afterglow. It feels like blinding himself on a mountain path. The thing that shows you the cliff edge can also bring the wolf to heel. He counts 1, 2, 3, and feels foolish because he is counting as if numbers protect you. Weber rolls above and back, searching for the scent. The Naxos needle flickers, wavers, weakens, then steadies as a neighboring bomber. H-2S alight, drifts too long on transmit. There, Guts says, almost tenderly. We're happening. They slide away into the black after another prey. Ash straightens, breath loud in his mask. Everyone alive clicks and curses answer in the affirmative. The engineer reports a graze on the starboard flap. Nothing vital. The bomb aimer. Terse, we're late. Make the run and finish it. David Pike flips H-2S back on in a burst, reads the river, the city, the triangular bright of rail yards, then kills it again. He will navigate by sips now, not gulps 2 seconds of picture, 10 of darkness, 2 of light. We can still do it, he says. Turn 2 right. Hold. Final in 30. They make their run like men crossing a road between snipers' short dashes. Breath held. Then a sprint. The doors open. The intervalometer ticks. The load drops. Ash yanks them away into a packed night of flak and friends and unknowns. Behind them a streak blooms bright and then vanishes. Someone else has not been as quick or as lucky. On the way out. The North Sea raises a frozen hand to bless them. Engines settle. Fish pond sleeps. Pike leans back, shoulders aching, and stares at the scope's faint ghost. He thinks of Malvern's huts, of Birmingham's bench, of a German in a twin-engine fighter smelling their song. The Magnetron has let them see through cloud and night. It has also made them a lighthouse in a sea full of wolves. At debrief, a TRE officer with tidy hair and tired eyes will ask careful questions. How long were you on transmit? Did fish pond trigger before attack? How many seconds between bursts he will jot in a small book that smells of damp. We'll try a shorter pulse, he will say. And there's an Mach 3 centimeter coming. Tighter beam, harder to hear. He does not promise safety. He promises adjustment. Next time, Ash tells his crew as they tramp back toward dispersal. Boots crunching frost. We blink. No dawdling on the lamp. Pike nods. hearing the Magnetron's silent note in his bones like a tuning fork still ringing. He has learned a new kind of seamanship to steer by echoes and hide their wake. The refinement 3 centimeters, and the night rewritten. March 3rd, 1944, RAF Gransden Lodge, Cambridgeshire, later, 18 to 500 feet over the Roar. A spindrift of snow crosses the dispersal like smoke as ground crews swarm under a Halifax that is not quite the same. Halifax Arthur Ashe Hargreaves flew to Hamburg. The familiar belly blister is there. But the feed horn has a different snout, inside the fuselage. The radar table wears a new control head with stubbier toggles and a hand-lettered placard, H2S Mach 3 centimeters. The Magnetron in its shielded cradle hums more tightly when the test set whispers to life, as if its song has been wound a turn higher on the peg. Sergeant David Pike runs a fingertip across the cathode ray tube's bezel, numbers engraved a hair finer. He has spent a week at TRE Malvern learning the new dialect. The brief there was very simple and very sharp. The Germans can sniff 10-centimeter sets with Naxos. At 3 centimeters, the beam is tighter. The spurious side lobes smaller. The reflections cleaner, and the enemy's ears, for now, are deaf. In a drafty classroom, an instructor sketched cones and lobes on a blackboard and then, smiling like a conjurer, overlaid a photo of a dock complex beside an H2S Mach 3 scope print. The rails became threads, the shed's individual teeth. On the older 10-centimeter sets, the city had been a bruise. On 3, it was a fingerprint. Like trading spectacles, the instructor said. You will see more and your lamp will be harder to see. Now, in the Halifax's metal marrow, Pike knows that promise is steel, not talk. He dials range and gain. The test set's phantom coastline snaps into focus with a crispness he has dreamed about since his first trip. Rivers knife blacker, bridges pop like pins on velvet. His hand moves with the confidence of a pianist who finds that the same keys produce new harmonies. Happy, Ash asks, leaning into the alcove with a grin that only a tired man can manage. Pike nods. It's like someone polished the glass. Snow turns to sleet by afternoon, but operations room lights stay hot. The blackboard clacks roar. Another night of wrestling with smoke and cloud over Europe's foundries, the densest target lace in the briefings, the deadliest flak grid in the diaries. The master bomber will mark by H2S if cloud holds. The pathfinders have scope prints curled in their pockets like love letters. On the way to the aircraft, a TRE liaison, a bespectacled captain with a Malvern pin and oil under his nails, walks alongside the crew. Speaking fast. Mach 3. Yes, remember your brief transmit in sips. But you can afford longer bursts to confirm rail yards. Fish pond tied in, Monica tail warning removed. Per the new order, Flensburg receivers have made it a liability. Window as briefed. Your call sign, Ash holds up a palm and smiles. We'll keep the lamps shaded. Night takes them clean. The Halifax lifts into a sky that feels metal cold. Flak already a rumor at the edge of thought. Somewhere astern, USAAF heavies have spent their daylight on factories further south. Now the RAF's Black River moves, in the nose. The bomb aimer tucks his chin into his mask and reviews the aiming point sketch rail marshalling yards threaded by a canal. The navigator's pencil ticks. The wireless op shakes out his shoulders and listens to a hush that means Window is already working on Würzburg. Lurking somewhere in the black. BF-110 and Ju-88 crews hunt with SN-2 and plan to finish with Schräge music. War. By March 44 is a machine of habits rubbing against fresh inventions until one catches. H2S live, Pike says. He thumbs on and the 3-centimeter set blooms. The Dutch coast hardens on the glass. Estuaries flare like neon hook shapes. He eases gain, trims brilliance. Even through thin scud, the picture is a photograph. Strange marriage of geometry and glow. First turn. The navigator calls. Wind high. 2 right. Copy. Ash's hands are calm on throttle and yoke. David. On my mark, Pike says, eyes deep in the tube. Now. He watches the river's steps, the canal bend, the tiny stud of a bridge flashing as the sweep rides across its girder bones. He toggles standby for 10-count old habits, now reinforced by Malvern's new warnings, and then on again. Just long enough to fix, then off. The rhythm is like breathing underwater. They reach the Ruhr's edge where mist and smoke knit into a quilt the naked eye can't read. But the scope reads, factories paint bright nests, slag heaps fuzz pale. The rail yard ladders, those parallel tracks, and their forest of points draw themselves in disciplined combs. Over the intercom, the master bomber toneless. Clipped orders, a correction markers to the south by 2 streets. Bomb between canal and switchyard. The language is all rails and water, and Pike has them both like a compass in his palm. Steady, he says. A fraction right. There's your ladder. Bright stub at the throat must be the signal gantry. If you hold through, the run will put you straight down the fan. Ash narrows his world to 1.5 degrees of bank. A hair of rudder. The particular pressure of frost-greased controls. Flax shakes the air with fist punches you feel first in your feet. A cone of searchlights gropes the wrong corridor, window lighting a false avenue. Fish pond stays blank. Somewhere below, a night fighter stoops on another ship, or misses and goes hunting again. There's no time to pity or gloat. The machine and the moment are one. Doors. Ash orders. The engineer answers, and cold air slaps their guts. Through the scope. Pike watches the rail yard's comb pass under them like a saw. On 10 centimeters last winter, he would have told Ash. Rail yard generally bright. Tonight he can see the head shunt, the coal stage, the canal's curve mirroring a row of sheds. He rides the sweep. Feels the rightness like a click in a lock. Hold. Hold. Now, he says. The Halifax lightens, lifts. Ash kicks rudder, banks, and the world fills with black tulips of flak, white scribbles of tracer, and the sudden dark peace that follows when nothing hits. Behind, the yard blooms new fire through cloud, a red that stains the underside of the deck as if the sky itself were bleeding. They run out on a heading to the west. Engines squared, eyes hunting the geometry of ambushed triangles and jaws. Pike flicks the set on in a short burst to confirm the coast, then off. His hand moving before thought. Habit and doctrine have braided into instinct. The 3-centimeter set has not made them safe. It has made them exact and a shade less loud to the wolves. Back on the dispersal. Hours later. Boots creak, hands are clapped, tea is thrust. In a debriefing hut perfumed with wet wool and burnt dust, a photo interpreter slides scope prints next to aerials and nods, satisfied in the quiet way of men who mark progress in millimeters. The TRE liaison points to the crispness of a bridge return on Meg 3 and lines it up with bomb damage. That, he says softly, is what we spent our family silver on. Ash signs his name, we're told. Then looks at Pike, who is still absently rubbing a patch of frost from his sleeve where his arm had rested against the set. Did we keep the lamp shaded? The pilot asks. Pike thinks of counting to 10 between bursts, of the way the rail yard's rails wrote themselves as clean lines, of a night fighter left sniffing at silence. He nods once. Shaded, he says. and it still lit the road. The legacy pictures in the dark. And the day after May 7th, 1945. RAF Whiten, Cambridgeshire debriefing hut. Late afternoon. Dust floats in a band of sun that sneaks past blackout curtains carelessly tied for once. The war is not quite over this hour, but it is leaning so hard toward peace that the chairs creak differently under tired men. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Ashe Hargreaves signs a form with a pencil bitten nearly to the paint. Sergeant David Pike lingers at the end of the table where a battered H-2S control head sits like an altarpiece hauled indoors from weather. The cathode ray tube is cold and dark. A clerk has left a teacup ring on the bakelite. Ops canceled again, a signals officer asks, poking his head in. He looks bewildered, like a man who has trained to run forever and now finds the track fenced off. Rumors say they'll tell us tomorrow. Ashe replies. He scratches his name one more time and sets the pencil down. Suits upstairs are arguing about the right words. Pike runs a finger over the engraved numbers around the tube's bezel. When he closes his eyes, he still sees a ghost of the sweep, and the way rails draw themselves like comb teeth when you've got the range right. He can also call up without wanting to the smell of hot cordite and glycol when flak has licked too close. A door bangs. In comes a small flock of visitors with the look of men who have crossed oceans and eaten sandwiches in corridors. One wears a Malvern pin, another an MIT tie clasp in blue enamel. The Malvern man spectacles, pockets stuffed with folded graphs, taps the H-2S head fondly. You two flew with this through the winter since January 43, Ashe says. 10 centimeters then. 3 since last spring. Good, the American says, and his accent puts a roundness in the room. You'll help us teach it to behave in peacetime. Pike smiles despite himself. Behave land doesn't stop being there when the guns go quiet. The American replies, microwaves don't either. He points at the belly blister peeking from the hangar door beyond the window. This sort of eye doesn't have to stare at dockyards. It can look for storms, or ships lost in fog, or hilltops hiding in cloud. Ashe hears the word storms and thinks of another river of aircraft. Daylight this time USAAF B-17s and B-24s dragging their own versions of H-2S Mickey. The Yanks called it across gray Europe when the weather slammed shut. He remembers February 44 big week, when even through overcast the Pathfinders could lead. He remembers summer missions where American crews detoured to Whiten to swap sets and stories, comparing scope prints the way fishermen compare lures. Names float up H2X, AN, APS-15. Microwave cousins born from the same magnetron heart. You ever see it from a mosquito, one of the visitors asks, as if changing the subject but not the terrain. Night fighter fit AI. Mach X, 3 centimeter. Those crews follow a bomber stream and dive on a shadow you can't see with eyes. Different craft, same song. Or the Sea War ASV, Mach 3 on Sunderlands and Liberators, centimetric beams catching a U-boat's conning tower like a match head on black water. Your Magnetron helped close the air gap. Pike nods. The stories were campfire staples in freezing dispersals, May 43. Black May, when wolf packs broke and limped home. He thinks of a Sunderland called the Flying Porcupine, bristling with guns and a belly eye that could spot a tin cylinder of a periscope in gray swell. He thinks, too, of how swiftly counters followed Naxos sniffing 10-centimeter song, German eyes finding British lanterns, British hands shading the lamp and cutting the wavelength to 3. The Malvern man flips open a folder and shows scope photographs like tiny constellations. Hamburg's dock arcs, Berlin's lake chain, the Ruhr's laddered rail yards. H-2S wasn't just an aiming device, he says softly, as if the room were a chapel. It made wind-finding exact. It gave diversions teeth. It let the master bomber talk sense in a storm. Most nights it meant you came home more often than you would have in 42. Ashes learned not to argue with the ledger of survival. But he cannot quite nod without the shadow that always leans in alongside streets that drew breath and exhaled flame. Hamburg, July 43. Operation Gomorrah, when wind, dryness, spacing, and chemistry conspired, and a city became one fire. He remembers the underside of cloud glowing through their cockpit and the heat punching their belly, as if the earth had become a kiln. The magnetron did not start that fire. He tells himself, it guided the hand that threw. The thought does not absolve, it only arranges. You stayed alive because you could see, the American says, not apologizing and not boasting. You also saw enough to know what seeing can do. A corporal from Signals arrives with a crate labeled Spares H2S MK, There 3, and sets it by the wall. He hesitates, then reaches in and pulls out almost sheepishly a copper block the size of a saucer, bored with 6 cavities like an ancient charm. Found this in the stores, he says, offering it to Pike. Thought you might want to look. The magnetron is heavier than it looks. Cold metal smells faintly of oil and time. Pike holds it as Randall and Boot once did in a Birmingham basement, oddly like a living heart, then passes it to Ash. The pilot turns it so the cavities catch the light. All that, he says. From this. The Malvern man agrees. And from 1,000 hands. Evening leans into the hut. Somewhere. A bicycle bell rings. Somewhere else. A pair of wafts laugh with a sound that has been missing from rooms like this for too long. The American with the tie clasp tells a story in a half-whisper about a Raytheon engineer, Percy Spencer, who stood too long in front of a live magnetron and found his candy bar melted, then turned that accident toward ovens that cook with waves you can't see. Another visitor sketches a weather radar with a chinradome under a Dakota, painting thunderheads like cities. The future arrives the way the bomber stream used to quietly, then all at once, with navigators murmuring headings and engines already warm. Tomorrow, or the day after, the Malvern man says, shutting his folder. They'll put these sets into civil aircraft, harbor tugs, trawlers, mountain stations. The map you learn to read at night will be drawn in daylight for strangers and schoolchildren. They'll point at storms, not dockyards. Pike rests his palm on the cold tube. He does not know if he'll stay in fly transports down clouded airways with a green eye glowing in the corner, or go home and try to sleep without counting seconds between standby and on. He knows only that the sweep has carved a groove in his brain he will carry forever. The magnetron's song will haunt him kindly and cruelly in equal parts. Ash tucks the saucer of copper back in its crate as if setting a relic on a pew. He straightens, looks out at the airfield where dispersal points sit like empty nests, and breathes out a breath he feels he's been holding since the first time the belly blister showed him a river through cloud. Tomorrow, then, he says, we'll learn to see something else. On the table. The H2S head catches the last of the sun and returns it in a dull, stubborn gleam, as if a sweep had run once across dead glass. Outside, the evening is clear. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails, and then, as if remembering itself, falls silent.